A boastful joke. Whenever you ask a question, you don't get an answer, you put it in the Q&A. All right, here's a question. Why does Rashi always say Old French? Rashi doesn't always say Old French. A random page in Chumash, you're not going to find Laz and Rashi. Once in a while, Rashi uses a foreign language. Simple reason is because Rashi is trying to explain to you that those times that was the language of the time, but Rashi is explaining people should understand. So just like the Rebbe says that we want Mashiach now, the Rebbe says there isn't a way of saying it in Hebrew. The same Anu Reitzi Mashiach Achshav doesn't really do it. The Rebbe says, well, Mashiach now, the word now brings out the demand now mamish in a way that it's not so strongly expressed in the Hebrew language. Similarly, the pastor Rashi sometimes feels that the best way of describing this, so whatever he's talking about, is by the word in French, and that was the language of the time. So that's the reason why Rashi sometimes will bring Old French. Rashi says belaz. Belaz can either mean the word for itself. Laz means a foreign language, or belaz can mean beloshin am zor, in the language of a foreign nation. Yes. A what?
What is it? Once in a while,
I guess that was whatever. But Pashas, that was the common language of the time. Or that word was common. Like also today we have words from other languages in English, but everyone knows what those words mean. Similarly, that's probably what ended up happening. Question: when is one meant to make a bracha on tvilas kelim? Tvilas kelim. When you buy a keli, you're supposed to toivel it. So it's obviously a big siman in Shulchan Aruch with many dinim. The three general rules are that it has to be the material. What kind of material is it? And usually we say if it's metal or glass, then you have to toivel with a bracha. If it's wood or if it's plastic b'pashtus, you don't have to table at all. If it's wood or other, I guess those are probably the four general types. If it's china, whatever, in that case, we're not going to make a bracha when we table. The second criteria is only if it's a utensil that ends up touching the food. So if you have, let's say, racks, so that you're in a commercial oven, where no one's ever putting food directly on the racks, it's always in a pan, those racks will not have to be toiveled. If it's a toaster at home, which often you put the bread directly on the toaster, that might be a need to be toiveled. And detail number 3 is only when you buy it from a goy. If you buy it from a Jew, there's no need to toivel. Those are the 3 general criteria. Material has to be usually metal or glass. That's for making a bracha. There are many times that we're going to toivel it without a bracha, even though these details don't apply. And second of all, it's a utensil that's used for directly using food. And third of all, more from a goy. I see many hands raised. We'll take the questions, but to clarify, I don't know the answers. All this. It's a huge siman Shulchan Aruch. One at a time. Yes. Stop making noise. Yes. Huh? I never heard that the Alter Rebbe said so. I want to add something, but only questions. But you're asked, I'll say it. I heard from a Lubavitch Rav that according to the Rogatchover, the rule only applies if you buy it from an individual goy, not from a commercial goy. Meaning, a goy that sells you his private pots and pans, that's when you have to toivel. But if you're buying from a store, this Rav told me that the Rogatchover says you don't have to toivel. And so, this is what this Rav told me, and based on that he says, to go and paskin like the Rogatchover against the Shulchan Aruch, he's not comfortable. But to make a bracha, he doesn't make a bracha. So I've heard as a child also that we don't make brachas on tefillas kelim, but most Rabbanim and Lubavitch Rabbanim say you do make a tefillas kelim. This is the basic Shulchan Aruch. You're making these 3 things. I'm not familiar that Alter Rebbe ever says not. This is Rav told this to me, but I don't know what most Rabbanim will say. You do make a bracha if these 3 criteria are met. Yes.
Let's say you have a blender who most of his plastic.
There's going to be a lot of what ifs. It's too big to answer. The pashtus, the blender, the actual blade. I mean, many utensils have part plastic and part metal. Like the piece of the blender, often the top piece is plastic, and the blades coming out are obviously metal. But pashtus, you have to table the whole thing. Again, the pashtus, it's too big for me to answer every question. Sai because I don't know, and sai because it might be different opinions. The pashtus, yes. Yeah.
I thought you can't table clay and wood.
You don't have to. Oh, you can't table whatever. You hold it underneath it. You walk up and down. It's not a big. Could, and you don't have to. For sure not. Every utensil has to be discussed for itself. But you ask her of every time, but practically you put it into a basket and you put it into the one, take it out. Yeah.
When you say bought from a Jew, is that a Jewish store, Jewish company?
The pashtus is a Jewish manufacturer. Pashtus, that's what we say. So it's meaning if the Yid bought it, Marshall in Crown Heights, you have the hardware stores. They have mikvahs in their stores. I'm buying it from the Jew. What's the problem? He bought it from a guy. But that's the pashtus why they table.
Nowadays, everything is made in China. So like,
The pashtus, most things are made by goyim today. So the pashtus, unless a yid has a manufacturing company, so even though the goyim are making it, but it's his from day one. In that case, maybe it doesn't have to be table.
partial ownership.
Good question. I don't know. These are one of the many what ifs. I know that when I once bought one of these hot urns for Shabbos, and there was a whole question: the table, not table it, and I went and I told it anyway, because people said you can table it, and then don't use it for a few days, it'll be fine. The pile didn't work, so I went to the Rav afterwards. I said, look, I tried to give you a lock and whatever. So that company, it's made by Jews before. You don't have to table the first place. So, our companies that I'm sure they make in China too, but it's made by Jews. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Why is it that people cannot eat before Kiddush?
Whoa. All Q&A has to be put in the paper, written and put on the back. So you can't put me on the spot. I'm not like your uncle that has everything on the ready to be answered. You have to, I need the time to prepare. Any question, write down, and then we'll get to that.
So what would
Yeah.
you suggest?
Only on the subject that we're talking, that I'm Kivyochel prepared, I'm ready to discuss.
What would you suggest your company do?
I get it off and to ask the Rav what to do. Are you allowed to put tefillin on the karkafta by night without a bracha? A karkafta, just for those that are not familiar. The word karkafta literally means a skull, but there's a term in Chazal of a person that never put on tefillin in his life before is called a karkafta de leimanach tefillin, and it says that it's a terrible thing for a yid to live in this world and never to put on tefillin. So that's why when you go on Mivtzayim and you got someone that put on tefillin for the first time, you come back and say, I got a karkafta today. It's usually a source of pride. I got 2 karkaftas today. Tons of karkaftas is like a big deal. So the Bacher is asking if I meet a Jew at night, and this Jew didn't put on tefillin yet. I'm not going to see him tomorrow. Remember the rules. Yeah, you. So the Bacher is asking, let me put on tefillin at night. Better at night than not put on at all without a bracha. The Pashas, the answer is no. I was just looking it up. But I saw someone asked a Rav a shayla about putting on tefillin and Chol Hamoed. Same situation. Chol Hamoed in a way is a lot better because Chol Hamoed, we know that Misnagdim, Ashkenazi Yidden, they put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed. So someone asked a Rav, well, if I meet a Yid that's not religious and I catch him on Chol Hamoed, so one time I see him, let me put on tefillin with him, I'll chaper in a mitzvah. And the Rabbanim basically have a whole arichas why it's wrong, why it should not be done. And even though all the reasons don't necessarily apply tonight, but most of the reasons do. And the Mela, the psak seemingly would be you do not put on tefillin at night. However, my grandfather one time was traveling on Tisha B'av. And Tisha B'av in the morning, we do not put on tefillin. We only put on Tisha B'av in the afternoon. But he was traveling, and in the morning he met the Yid that had him put on tefillin that day, and he put on tefillin in the morning. He told me that's Tisha B'av is different. Tisha B'av morning is not as bad as Chol Hamoed or night. So there you can put on tefillin. But Chol Hamoed the night l'chayda not at all. What? Yeah, but it's only tzaddikim. Regular people are not supposed to. So the same idea, you're not supposed to. And he said it's fine, Is the Rebbe in the oil? That is the belief of most Hasidim, or many Hasidim, I should say. There are Hasidim that feel differently, but most Hasidim feel, and that's a simple understanding of things, and based on the regular rules of Torah. In Torah, we have a situation where a tzaddik, even though after a tzaddik passes away, he's still considered alive, and he's still considered alive begashmius, and yet he has an oil, just like it says Yaakov Avinu lo yimes, but we know Yaakov Avinu is buried in the oil of Maras HaMachpelah. Moshe Rabbeinu lo yimes, but he's buried in an oil which we don't know where it is somewhere, but it's somewhere out there, and if in Har Navai, wherever that's supposed to be. So B'meila, the majority of Hasidim understand the same thing applies to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is in the oil, and at the same time the Rebbe is alive begashmius. How does that work is a very heavy question, which I don't think anybody has a comfortable answer. But regardless, that's the simple belief of I would say the majority of Hasidim. Some people will say not the majority, but that's you're asking me, so I'm saying my answer. Do you need to button your jacket? And if you do, why does no one do that? So the truth is, when I got this question, I was sure this is going to be an easy answer because I know you're supposed to button your jacket. And I would just open up the Shulchan Aruch and find it right there. But surprise, surprise, I looked and I looked and I looked, and it doesn't clearly say you're supposed to close your jacket when you daven. However, I noticed that many people told me that the Rebbe was very particular that Bachim should close their jackets. The Rebbe would often see a Bacher that a jacket was open by davening and tell the Bacher to close his jacket, and specifically close it right over left. The Pashtus, the reason would be because it says, Hiklin Nikras Elokecha Yisrael, prepare yourself before you daven to Hashem. Part of the preparing is to wear it, to be look well. So just like when you can argue, but let's say you go for pictures by a chassan, now most people would put their jacket together. You can argue, not everyone does that. Some people wear a jacket in the first place, but it's a kind of more respectable way of doing it, and that's seemingly the main reason. Yachad im zeh, it's important to note that the Rebbe speaks about that it's supposed to be right over left. The jacket should be right over left, and that's why if you have a single-breasted jacket, so you have to flip it over. A double-breasted jacket is better klal enough, but there's a button to be able to do so. Yeah. Chesed over good. The Rebbe talks about that in Sichos. Yeah, but so that I've seen many times in the Rebbe Sichos. But in Shulchan Aruch, I always try to find an earlier source. I wasn't able to find an earlier source that you have to close your your jackets by Shulchan Aruch. As the second question, the Bachar asked, why do many people not do it? So that's, I guess, because everyone looked in the Shulchan Aruch, couldn't find the source for it. They figured probably we didn't have to do it. But that's probably what ended up happening. But the truth is that you should be doing it. Every mincha ma'ida by shachris is different. Shachris because you have the tefillin over your jacket. If you have tefillin over you wear your jacket over your shoulder, like most bachrim do, then there's no need to drop button your jacket. If you're like the people that do it from underneath, then you'll obviously you're closing it anyway. Yeah.
Why would you do it right on the left? Isn't that technically the heat from here before the davening? It's kind of like I think it's like you way over the left with the single breast jacket.
It doesn't look so nice, and the part is you're supposed to beautify yourself. The answer must be that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And the Eibishter looks at this as beautiful, even though by us, if you see a person with a jacket, he looks like this guy's a shluch. But by the Eibishter, right over left, I'm happy with that. That must be the best. I think everyone's also on the Chiddush side. And you walk into someone's house and you see a beautiful svarim shank with all the svarim very nicely lined up. You walk into someone else's house and most of them are beaten and ripped and torn apart like this. So if you understand what svarim are, you say, wow, that's cool. That guy really knows his stuff, even though it's ugly. The other guy, fine, it looks nice, but you know there's such a svarim. Someone else raise the hand over there. All right. Next question is: do some of the schoolish charms or protection work for goyim? Okay, the words are not so clear. The Bach is basically asking if schoolish and charms that we have, do they work for goyim as well? So first of all, there's a famous story, which is officially a true story. There was one time a yid driving down the highway in the turnpike or something over there, and he sees a guy standing on the road with a yarmulke when there was a broken car. So he pulls over right away. Yes, wherever. To get stuck, and starts helping him out. And as they're talking, he asks him, "Where you're from? You're from Lakewood? You're from which town exactly?" He says, "No, I'm not really Jewish. It's yarmulke." So my mom told me once that if I ever get stuck on the highway, put on one of these Jew caps, and within 5 minutes, someone's going to stop to help me out. So that zgula obviously helps. The zgula of having a yarmulke will help. Similarly, if you have, there's a story also. I think this happened. There's a famous story. There was I think it was by COVID, maybe it was before COVID. I think in Japan, one of those places where there was everyone had to run away. Maybe it was a hurricane. There was some kind of situation where a lot of people had to run away from a neighborhood. And when they came back, the shliach came back to his house as well, the shliach in the area. And a few days or weeks after he came back home, it's a real story. All the names are there, I just don't remember. And the police called him in. They wanted to speak to him. They basically, they told him that in those few weeks, and everyone ran away. There was a gang of robbers that went through from house to house, and they stole from every house. When they came to his house, they didn't steal. They didn't break in. Why? So the robbers said that we went through every house and we saw the security, and they were professionals. They saw that they were very good at dismantling security systems. Every house that they went into, they checked it out first, saw the security system, checked up their manuals. Okay, how to dismantle this one was good. But they got to the Jew's house, they saw this funny security system that they never known before. They weren't sure how it works exactly. They looked at the pictures and they went and they were afraid to touch it because maybe they're going to be busted. So they backed out. So Mamela, that was the whole conversation that the Mezuzah protected him. So that's again that school that might work. But halachically, if the school does work, so there's a story in the Gemara. This was all like jokes. There's a story in the Gemara with Daniel. Daniel is Hamudas that when he was taken into Golus, and the king that destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash, what was the name? Yehuda? Nebuchadnezzar. A wicked king, a terrible person, one of the meanest people there ever were, and he did terrible things to the Yidden. And what happened was he had this terrible dream where he was going to turn into an animal, and he asked Daniel what does the dream mean and all that, And then Daniel gave him a suggestion. He told him, if you give tzedakah, it won't happen to you. And the Nebuchadnezzar gave tzedakah. He said he accepted. He knew Daniel was right. Whatever Daniel said was always true. So he started giving tzedakah. And there's a whole story. He gave tzedakah for a full year. He opened up all of his treasure houses for the Jews, all the poor Jews that were refugees, didn't have anything for the came from Eretz Yisrael. What the story says, a year later, he ended up one day walking by and seeing all these Jews taking his food. He said, enough already, I'm not interested in supporting the Jews anymore. And he stopped it, and the next day his dream was fulfilled. He turned into an animal, whatever it's supposed to mean exactly, and he disappeared for 7 years. He came back, the point of the story is that we see in that story that the tzedakah that he gave protected him. So here we see Nebuchadnezzar was a king, a goy, he gave tzedakah, and he was protected as a result. Stop disturbing him. Why would you sit down? I know, he didn't say it's you, so what's that? No. Bring your chairs over there. So we see from that story that when the goy does certain things, they are protected. Now, when it comes to sgulas bichlal, sgulas in general, it's not so clear how they work and who they work. If a goy comes into shul on Yom Kippur and buys mafter yoina for his friend, will the goy become wealthy? I don't know. It's hard to know these things exactly how they work. Because every person that buys after maftir become very wealthy, we know that it's not necessarily so. So the Mele, all these schools, how they work exactly, it's really a lot of it is behind the scenes. A lot of it is unfortunately even made up stuff. I was just recently listening to Ashir, and this guy was saying that there's a famous gula. Those that are from Eretz Yisrael know. There's a famous gula to find the shidduch, and that's to go and daven in the city of Amuka by the caver of Yonasan ben Uziel. If you're ever Eretz Yisrael, there's posters, there's all the time. There's charter buses and schools, and everyone talks about Yonasan ben Uziel, Amuka, school for a shidduch. The whole Israel knows about it. This guy says it's a Baba Meiser. Never ever happened. There's no source for it. Somebody made it up, and everyone goes for it. So a lot of the gulas, unfortunately, are like that. So therefore, it's hard to know. The gulas that are real, you have to know where they come from, and based on where it comes from, to know does it apply to Yid or not. So when it comes to tzedakah, we see from the Gemara, you see tzedakah clearly protects you. But Nebuchadnezzar or Goy, it worked. Other cases, you have to. Each individual case has to be explored for itself. There's a whole bunch of questions that are here that I wasn't able to find sources for them, but I'm going to say the pshat what I was thinking. One question is similar to before. If you meet a karkafta and you only have Rabbeinu Tam on you, do you put Rabbeinu Tam on him? That's a whole different question, different than this is by the daytime. Over here, I would say yes. I was trying to look for an answer. I couldn't find an answer. Unlike when it comes to night and Cholamayid, where you're not supposed to put on tefillin, Rabbeinu Tam, everyone is supposed to put on. And ideally, you should put on Rabbeinu Tam, even if you're on a lower level. That's the one that Rebbe's Chidushim. Rebbe's Mechadish, that even you should know in Chabad, the minute used to be in Chabad, that you only started putting on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin either when you're 18 or when you get married, or you get special permission from the Rebbe. The Seder was every Baruch was going to Yechidus to the Rebbe for his birthday, and he would ask the Rebbe, can I start putting on Rabbeinu Tam? And sometimes the Rebbe would say yes at the age of 14, 15, 16. Sometimes they would say no, and push it off till 18, till even later sometimes. And eventually the Rebbe said, now already times have changed, and everyone should put on tefillin from their bar mitzvah, Rabbeinu Tam from their bar mitzvah, and even from before the bar mitzvah, the 2 months before, as we know, we start putting on Rabbeinu Tam. So the Rebbe basically says, today Rabbeinu Tam applies to everybody. Based on that, I would assume that if you see a person that didn't put on any tefillin at all, and all you have is Rabbeinu Tam, I would assume you do so. Of course, the Chatchila, we don't go on with 2 pairs of tefillin, holding on tefillin, Rabbeinu Ashi and Rabbeinu Tam with people. That doesn't make sense. A person has to first work on basis before you advance to the next level. But if you have nothing else, my humble opinion would be to put up Rabbeinu Tam. Another question over here is, why don't you bury your peeled skin? The Bacher, sometimes you get peeled skins. The assumption is when Chas v'Shalom there's some kind of a terrorist attack, and you have a person's body is plastered all over the place. There's something called the Zaka, the Zihui Korbanot Ason. Basically, the organization of people that come there and they find the body parts and they go and they collect every part and they put it together and they bury it all together. And at that point, whatever they find, whether it's skin parts or any other body parts, it all has to be collected. So the Bacher is wondering, well, if I peel skin, maybe that should be buried too. The answer is obviously we don't. The Baruch is asking why not. The answer is because that only applies to a person that passes away. A person that's alive doesn't have to. Just for example, when your tooth falls out. At this point, your teeth aren't falling out anymore, Mitzvah Hashem. But when you're younger, your tooth falls out. No one buries their tooth. Even your hair, you cut your hair, is also part of your body. A dead person's hair has to, sure, they get cut, but whatever. But if he's killed, if his hair goes along with him to the grave also. But it's only a dead person. A live person, so if it's a complete limb, a person has to amputate a limb over there, the minhag is to bury it. But that's not because of the honor of the body, it's more a concern for the kohen. We don't want it because there's a halacha that even a limb of a person can make a kohen tameh. So we don't want this limb of this human or this live person to be around. So then we bury it. But if it's peeled skin, it doesn't make anybody tameh, and therefore there's no problem to throw it out. Yes. There's different minhagim what to do with that. Yeah. Obviously a lot of jokes as you can imagine. Yeah. This is the holiest mitzvah. That's why it has the most jokes. Yeah. What, the bris?
Yeah.
There is such a minute, there is such a concept. There were some moilim, there are some moilim that they have in every erla that they have a container in their house. They have hundreds and hundreds all together. Maybe in the freezer, maybe it's in the pot of soup. I use that in the fridge. Maybe it's in a container on the ground. So where is it going to be? Is it pickled? Pickled in blood. No, whatever. However it works. There's different minhagim about that, but that's off topic. Yeah.
No one who buries the tissue as a kid.
Huh?
There's no one who buries like when a kid.
Maybe there are. I've never heard of such a thing.
How they bury used to like to when artists used to.
Go from them after.
No, you put it in the toilet.
No. I'm very.
No, we put them in the toilet.
No, bash tissue in toilet. In the beginning, they used to bury them. Then there was a whole graveyard. There was not much place, so they put them into the toilet.
I remember what you used to do.
Okay, we'll find out. Another question over here. Why did Rashi make new aleph bays? The Bacher is assuming that Rashi's script is made by Rashi, and he wonders why did Rashi do so. So it's a mistake. Rashi did not make the new fonts. Rashi, we don't know exactly what fonts I don't know what fonts he used, but the fonts that we call Rashi fonts were created by typists a few hundred years later. It was basically a kind of script that they used in the old times. You can still see today. There's many copies of many manuscripts of people. They're cursive, what they would write aleph bays. They wrote in what we call Rashi script. And then when the printers made it, they used that. They say it was more practical. It took up less space. It was easier to put it there. And the reason why it's called Rashi script is because when they started printing, they printed the Chumash on top and Rashi on the bottom. And they wanted to differentiate between what's Chumash and what's Rashi. So they said, we'll use different the typesets, different fonts. And those times, there weren't as many fonts as there are today, obviously. So the typists came up with this idea. We're going to use the block letters for the top and the type letters, the Rashi letters for the bottom. Another svara that was said is because the Rashi the real letters, the black letters are too similar to letters of a Sefer Torah, and those kind of letters shouldn't be used for things that are not as holy as Chumash itself. Those are different reasons, but it was used only afterwards. It wasn't. There's no real point in it. So Rashi letters is not really written by Rashi. That's a famous misconception. It was done for printing purposes. Just to point out that the Rebbe famously said that when you tell you the Siddur, the Mamorim of Siddur, many of the Mamorim used to be printed in Rashi letters, and the Rebbe asked to print everything in black letters. For most people, it's easier to read those letters than the Rashi letters. Is it okay to cover your eyes for Shema with your Siddur? So again, I didn't have a chance to look this up. I looked up a little bit. I couldn't find the pashas. The answer is no, and that's because the honor of the siddur, the sefer, is a holy thing. It's not meant to be used for blocking other things. And in this case as well, you're meant to use your hand. Again, I couldn't look up, but I think it's the regular svara to say so. If anybody finds a strong source that says differently or that says that way, then adra. If someone chas v'sholom is brain dead and their heart is still going, which you can keep it pumping forever, does he go to Shemayim or not? There's no way to revive his brain. The Bacher is assuming that you can pump his heart forever. I don't think that's true. I looked it up a little bit in some medical sources, and in medical sources it seems that on a person is brain dead, so they can keep the heart going for a little bit, but eventually the heart fails, and even the pump is not going to continue. They say that the longest a person ever survived, brain dead and being kept on life support, was 20 years, which is a very, very long time. 20 years of nothing, but the Pashtus, after that, even the machine wasn't doing anything. So my understanding is he's still considered alive, and therefore his neshama is not lamayla. His neshama is still connected to his body. The moment everything falls apart, that's when the neshama finally leaves the body. And according to Torah, we do whatever we can to keep him alive, even though, I mean, look at this person, 20 years of what? 20 years of no one having to do anything with him. He was just like, the Goyish perspective is like, what were we doing? What was the point? We knew that he's never going to come back alive again, or healthy again. So what was the point? Just keeping him alive in such a Eifin? Sal Pisor, it might make sense, but according to Torah, it's forbidden. Anytime a person is alive, according to Torah, we have to keep him alive as much as possible, even though there's a big discussion of what's the definition of alive, and that's might be a heter sometimes. Is it okay to eat things that come out of the human body? I would say what comes out of your nose, for example, or when you go to the bathroom. So halachically, the pastures is no iser. According to halacha, mitzat kashrus, I should not halachically. Mitzat kashrus, there's no iser. Mitzat kashrus, it's forbidden to eat human flesh. Human flesh is a iser to eat. However, other things, there's a different aveda. The aveda is called bal teshakzu. Bal teshakzu means you're not allowed to make yourself grossed out. You can't do something which is really disgusting and gross. And everyone would agree this is disgusting and gross, and therefore the pashtus halacha would make it usher. Why by Shemona Esrei do we put our feet together to be like Malachim? If Hashem gave us the Torah. Very nice question. Baruch is asking, we know that we put our feet together by Shemona Esrei because we have to be like Malachim. But l'chayra, Hashem gave us the Torah, so we're greater than Malachim. So why act like Malachim? Let just be us. So I looked it up and I found over here a sefer called the Prisha. It's a Pirush on the Tur. And he writes over here a svara, he says, he brings some other mefarshim, that the whole purpose of putting your feet together is to show that you're not running around. And he says that this we're trying to show he basically says the fact that we're running around all the time shows that we're not consistent in our Avodas Hashem. And basically what he's trying to say, in other words, is that it's obvious that Malachim have advantages over us, even though the Torah was given to us and not to Malachim. However, there's obviously matters. The Malachim serve Hashem purely. But Pashas, why are there Malachim? Torah was given to us. What's the point of Malachim? Because there are certain things that they do that they better than we can do. Their service of Hashem is more consistent. It's consistent completely. It's more stable, and there's a certain nachas that Hashem has from it. And therefore, when we daven Shemona Esrei, you want to show Hashem, look, we don't have any chesroinus. We're now picking ourselves up to have the mile of the malachim, so we have all the milas. Aside the mile of the neshama down here that struggles with the Yetzer Hara, and we also have the mile of the malachim that we're not being tied down to any specific, that we're not being schlepped away to other things, and we can serve Hashem in a consistent manner as well. So that's pretty much the question for today. So those that are new, you can turn it off. Those that are new already understand the style. There's many different styles you can